Deep in the blackened bowels of Barad-dûr, a great evil is brewing. Sauron's army grows with every passing day as the Dark Lord's piercing eye surveys the lunar wasteland of Mordor, looking for his prized possession, the Ring of Power, the one ring to rule them all. It's far from his clutches for now, but Sauron intends to draw it out soon enough, setting a great war into motion, one in which the very fate of Middle-earth is at stake. But all of that is a tale for another day. Instead, the one I'm playing currently involves me herding Boroks into a pen via a minigame that feels and unfortunately looks like something that you'd expect to play in a title released 2 generations ago. It's an awkward experience to say the least, but running up against these types of bizarre and broken sequences that add very little to the value of the overall texture of Tolkien's fantasy are sadly a far too common occurrence in the Lord of the Rings Gollum. Developer Daedalic was always going to have a hard time justifying why audiences needed to know what its titular character was up to in the events preceding the Fellowship of the Ring. But throw in off-putting visuals, shallow gameplay, and a litany of bugs, and the Lord of the Rings Gollum offers an experience that's not so much an unexpected journey, but one to just avoid altogether. To its credit, Daedalic does at least demonstrate a clear fondness and familiarity with Tolkien's source material. Bookending its original tale with Gollum's 2 imprisonments under Sauron and the Elves of Mirkwood respectively, the developer uses this structure to clever effect in places, with Gandalf's interrogation of Gollum serving as a helpful framing device for its opening chapter.
The Dark Lord, what did you tell him?
Nothing. We swears.
Daedalic also brings its own contributions to Middle-earth in the form of new characters that feel more or less at home with the rest of the cast. Even so, that doesn't stop the story from feeling largely directionless at times. Until Gollum meets Sam and Frodo in Tolkien's book, he operates mostly as a passive observer, and let's face it, victim to the events around him. And the game's plot reflects this lack of agency, colouring in the gaps of his backstory with low-stakes contextual filler, involving a lot of prison labour drained of narrative momentum. Thankfully, even if The Lord of the Rings Gollum doesn't quite land as a compelling chapter in the tapestry of Middle-earth's history, the game can still hold interest as a character study of its tragically corrupted protagonist. This is partly due to Daedalic's adopting a more sympathetic view of Gollum than the other adaptations have. Some of this characterization doesn't quite correlate to the feistier, more manipulative Gollum that many of us are accustomed to, but it's certainly a unique perspective that allows you to relate to him a little better over the course of the game's 24-hour runtime.
We must find help. He mustn't see us. No, not him.
It also helps that you have a certain degree of freedom to lean to either side of the character's dual personality, offered via dialogue options or even full-blown internal arguments between Gollum and Smeagol. These choices result in some minor plot changes, but are more interesting as a way for you to determine the balance between Smeagol and his ring-corrupted alter ego. Unfortunately, much of the Lord of the Rings Gollum writing is undermined in the execution. His voice actor in particular takes direct inspiration from Andy Serkis's iconic performance in the Peter Jackson films, but in doing so only really invites himself to unflattering comparisons between the two, right down to his phlegmy Gollum cough. You end up wishing Daedalic had considered a performance built around a completely new interpretation of the character, and in fact the same can be said for much of the Lord of the Rings Gollum's production value. It often feels like a rough-edged facsimile of Tolkien's rich and epic fantasy universe. This is largely down to the fact that this is not a good-looking game. Characters appear flat and lifeless, vistas are murky and lacking detail, and textures are so drab and washed out you can easily be mistaken into waiting for them to pop in with a sharper resolution that simply never arrives. This also extends to the character's animations, that are usually just as unconvincing as his voice, and almost laughably off-putting in places. It's no secret that a large part of what made the Gollum character land in the Lord of the Rings movies was the dedicated motion capture and animation work that helped bring him to life, and the comparative dearth of it here in this game is impossible to ignore, with Gollum's dialogue and facial expressions never quite correlating authentically with each other. The overwhelming result of all of these compromises is a muddy vision of Middle-earth, and one that never truly connects as a compelling fantasy playscape. Perhaps the Lord of the Rings Gollum's lack of polish would be less of an issue if the gameplay left a better impression, but unfortunately much of it boils down to your standard stealth platform with fear, frustrated further by wonky controls and hapless AI. But the first red flag for the game's awkward stealth design is the fact that being caught usually results in an instant game over state, setting you back to the last checkpoint. Gollum is capable of killing an enemy via a well-timed stealth throttle attack, but doing so takes a long time and exposes him to potential discovery, making it a wiser choice to instead stay hidden in the shadows. It's a blueprint that has been followed plenty of times before in the genre. But even if it wasn't so derivative, Gollum never feels particularly fun to play as. Many simple actions like jumping or throwing a rock feel wooden and unwieldy to perform. And with no progression tree or new tools to acquire across the game, Gollum's shallow range of abilities stay uniform throughout the entire experience. Daedalic does try to spice up the level variety beyond simple stealth scenarios, either through distinct missions focused on Gollum's prison life, or the introduction of allies that may be able to help you during certain sequences. But even when the game exhibits more inspired design choices, it's let down by its continuously frustrating bugs and technical issues. Ultimately, it's difficult to not come out of the Lord of the Rings Gollum with a sour taste in your mouth. You can see glimmers of Daedalic's intent to create a different kind of Lord of the Rings game throughout, particularly in the way that it manifests its unlikely hero's unique psychological state. But those bright spots are quickly lost amidst all of the other ways that Gollum stumbles in its execution. Perhaps there is a Gollum game that could work both narratively and mechanically, but this just simply isn't it. We give the Lord of the Rings Gollum 2 out of 5 stars. Make sure you subscribe to GamesRadar on YouTube so you don't miss any of our future gaming reviews.